They weren't expecting her to prevail. Judges wearing gleaming blazers rather than viewers wearing their high-end leashes, and dogs that are camera-ready and most definitely not. The well-known dog showed Judge Grant Mullery, renowned for his exacting standards and unwavering views on who actually belonged in the prestigious dog world. Rivalry, but Harper Quinn intervened, shoulders squared in the middle of the ring, with one hand lightly resting on A. Valor is a German shepherd who is quiet and vigilant. At 60, she didn't resemble A. Rival more like to someone who'd entered after wandering in from another world, completely a life scarred by silence and survival. None was aware of its existence. Took for her to arrive with no one other than for Maya, a 10-year-old girl, and the dog who repeatedly saved her. This was more than just a tale of triumph. The goal was to restore loyalty and the everlasting connection created in the dark and fire-tested long before she ever entered the ring that Harper Quinn was wearing. Survived a distinct type of. She served on the battlefield for more than 20 years as a U.S. Army combat medic, treating injured troops in the worst possible circumstances during a fire. In the dark of night, during dust storms, she had witnessed things that most others couldn't even fathom, and she had brought all of scar each scream and every breath of deep into her bones as the last deployment came to a conclusion. So did Harper, in a different form that used to laugh readily and with integrity, trusted others. Released at age 54, she went back to her home in rural Oregon in the hopes of, instead of finding calm, she discovered stillness that reverberated excessively in shadows that came to life as the sun set. The nightmares quickly arrived, returned, and the panic episodes didn't. Chilly sweat and constriction in her chest. The abrupt memories of sirens and shrapnel and yelling. She stayed away from crowds. Loud areas, steered clear of anything that could set her off, and it happened during one of her wandering automobiles in the outskirts of town where she discovered a German stray, rain-soaked shepherd hobbling from an ancient wound resting next to a flooded ditch, revealing his ribs through his matted coat. His eyes were weary, but he was still observing. Something about the route was injured by caution. When she came closer, he didn't recoil, informed her that he had witnessed a war of his own. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. She unlocked her truck's rear end and, "You're not dying out here," he remarked quietly. Tonight, however, he entered without A. She gave him the name Valor, although she didn't understand at the time, but that damaged dog would turn into the one constant in her life, and the start of something she believed she had lost forever. I hope it was just the two of them at first. Harper and Valor spending peaceful days together, and calmer evenings when they didn't talk the same language, yet they were able to understand one another. The stillness of the second Harper wasn't meaningless. The quiet of Valor wasn't passive to Harper, and the two of them discovered a rhythm that only survivors are familiar with. And the 10-year-old granddaughter of Maya Harper brought a luggage that was too large for her little body and eyes that had previously seen more often than most kids should. The daughter of her mother Harper had died abruptly, and Maya was left with nowhere else to go. Consequently, she moved in with a grandma. She had a dog that she hardly remembered, never met, but grief is aware of sadness. It took Maya a short while to curl up, Valor's head laying next to her, his flank as if he were protected. Valor in itself, as though comprehending the child's weight, remained with her. Maya never spoke much on the side, initially, but she created sketchbooks full with pictures of brave people resting and running. She would occasionally draw Harper while she watched, but always from behind, as though terrified. One night, to see her face on paper, upon Harper's awakening from a nightmare, Maya arrived trembling and soaked in perspiration, taking her barefoot into the room. "You were crying," the girl said in her sketchbook. Harper stared and whispered, "I heard you." Not only the child, but also the suffering at Maya. Behind those impressionable eyes, she already. What kind of world would she live in without her mother? What if she loses the one person as well? Harper couldn't afford to be left to rely on, to fall apart no more if it weren't for herself. After which she had a battle for Maya. She needed to figure out how to get back to Harper, to state that it was insignificant, but when Maya revealed the sketchbook to her, displaying a illustration of Harper cuddled up with Valor, forming a shield on the ground jointly. Against the darkness, she was unable to locate the words of healing from that night on. Became a joint activity that they did. Harper was clearing out in the afternoon. Mia discovered a worn-out old storage box. Her mother's dog training guidebook had previously utilized Harper later that evening. Observed Maya viewing a video about veterans with PTSD benefiting from service dogs. Something clicked, perhaps during Valor's training. Wasn't solely about following orders. Perhaps there'd be a means for her to return, so they began with simple routines and tiny commands. Not yet for the competition, but for. They cooked and went for morning walks to recuperate. Calm, modest meals that taught bravery. Patience, Mir's cheering videos. Each time he made progress, Harper started to feel more present, not merely living with what they had while surviving. Wasn't ostentatious, but it was genuine. 3. Broken hearts regaining their ability to beat. Synchronized. The concept originated with Maya, sitting on the porch in the evening, observing Maya while Valor chases fireflies. With a spark in her eyes, she looked to Harper. "Grandma, there's a dog training session. Tournament in town next month, I believe." Harper laughed when he said, "Valor could win. Only pays half attention to me. Although, when it matters, he pays attention," Maya insisted. "Moreover, it's not only about winning. It's about demonstrating to everyone how incredible." He's hesitant at the whole idea of appearing in front of a crowd beneath the bright lights and alert eyes roused. Anxiety raging inside of her, reminiscent of the mayhem she had already encountered, was fighting, but then she looked hopeful, resolute, and incredibly filled at Maya. Of conviction, perhaps this was more than just a contest. Perhaps it was an opportunity to recover a piece of herself that she believed. Harper nodded. "I'm lost, okay? Let's perform it that evening, well after Maya's." Harper went to bed and sat by herself in the. Her hands were encircling a mug in the kitchen. In cold tea, the notion of clawed competition. She is both fascinating and disturbing. When the loudness of the crowd illuminates everything she had evaded for years, and her thoughts were racing with. She didn't want to rehash those memories. Sirens, cries, and the sensation of bloodied gloves, her chest constricted, but then, at her feet, Valor's steady breathing, as well as Maya's gentle snore. She drifted out of the other room, couldn't allow dread to triumph. Once more when two now relied on her for support. She had made it through a war. She could make it across this arena. It wasn't about trophies. It was about taking back authority. For herself, Maya, and the canine that had never stopped training. Increased with each morning's practice. Demands obedience, agility exercises, and routines. Valor enthusiastically replied, and Maya took over as the coach informally, encouraging them and maintaining their spirits. There were relapses due to Harper's PTSD, would suddenly bring up memories. Like tidal waves, they crash in, but each, while Maya and Valor were present, a consistent hand, a soothing presence on the day. When the competition started, the arena was humming. Dogs barking energetically when people conversing, and event announcements over loudspeakers. Harper's heart was racing, but she concentrated on Valor, who remained vigilant by her side and prepared, and they performed flawlessly. Valor carried out each order with accuracy, and Harper followed. Self-assurance she hadn't had in years when Harper was declared the winner, and when Valor won first place, tears filled my eyes. As Harper embraced Maya and looked into her eyes, Valor wasn't merely a triumph in a contest. It was a victory over fear, evidence of recovery and a fresh start. Harper wiped away her bravery and tears, nuzzled her hand while the audience continued to hum. A man stood up from their performance, silently close to the judge's tent while wearing polished and a pricey suede jacket. Footwear. He didn't smile or clap as the others called him Grant Ellison, renowned sponsor and breeder in the. He has observed circuits for premier dog shows. Valor's habit of closely examining his arms. The jaw was clenched and crossed. Something in the manner in which the dog moved. Answer not to orders, but to instinct rather than instruction. It was something Deeper something uncommon as Harper turned. Gonna depart with Valor, Grant, and Maya. Cold, calculating eyes followed them. He remained silent, but the wheels in. His thoughts were already shifting to The win was short-lived 2 days later. Harper wakes up from the competition to a haunting. The typical morning nuzzle of silence Valor was. Her heart pounded as she called. Missing. Again, but she was unable to locate the leash of a jar of Valor still dangling from the back door. Panic erupted unchecked by the wall. Harper contacted Maya in an attempt to keep her steady voice, but the way she looked, granddaughter's big, trembling eyes, lips informed her that she was already aware of. Look through the local poster's phone. Makes frantic appeals on social media. However, Valor had disappeared completely. Harper sat in oppressive silence spending hours outside gazing at the horizon as though his will alone might deliver him. When she got home, her PTSD came roaring back. Cold chills, nightmares, and crushing. The burden of powerlessness one afternoon when she slumped as thunder boomed in the distance. On the kitchen floor, gasping for air, Maya rushed over and grabbed her shoulders. Don't disappear, Grandma, not again. Harper wiped away her tears and said, I'm not sure. Yes, you can do this without him. You're strong, Maya said. More courageous and powerful than anyone I know. Needs you right now. That was the time when Maya's voice was filled with anxiety as she recalled Valor, putting pressure on her leg in a panic. Assaults that made Harper realize he had been led to the door by someone, was left open with no indication of conflict. Barking wasn't just anything she did. Recalled Grant the icy sparkle in his eye as he witnessed bravery throughout the competition, the manner in which he cheered without. Something in her stomach twisted as she smiled. The Harper's heart was racing with fresh. Decided she couldn't give up now. Times Valor might be frightened. She owed it to him, and it ached. The battle wasn't finished, Maya. It had merely. The house felt empty at first without. That daybreak, the heroic Harper kept playing. What she could have done differently. What indications might she have overlooked? Like a medic, he went over every second, examining the unsuccessful triage. Where had she? Failing him daily, fading into the telephone poles were covered by the next flyers. Harmon conversed with neighbors who knocked on doors, searched nearby shelters, but nothing was found. Seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Maya held out hope that someone would notice. She would murmur, someone will call him. Every night, she runs her finger over They kept a faded map on the kitchen table. Harper wasn't really sure of her gut feelings. Cried out that this wasn't a straightforward loss. Dog bravery never fled. He always returned. No, this was something else. Determined late one evening, Harper sat, staring at her corkboard by herself. Made maps, pictures, pins, and notes, but nothing. She clenched her fists in connection, trembling with a built-in panic attack. Her chest before recalling Maya's. Confront the day when courage vanished in a dread. Her tone as she pleaded, don't vanish. That recollection kept her breathing, Grandma. Harper closed her eyes and reflected about the rivalry, the crowd, the cacophony, faces, and then one face came out of the mist. Grant Ellison had been present and observed. Too quiet, she recalled the gaze in his eyes while Valor did chilly. She was calculating her heart. Pummeled, which must indicate something. She extracted the software from the name of the competition. Grant appeared as a. Harper selected the sponsor with trembling hands, picked up the phone, and dialed the local law enforcement. She responded, I need to report a theft, and I believe I know who abandoned my puppy, but it wasn't. A lot to go on without any witnesses or cameras. Video without evidence. Yet it was a location too. Harper wasn't prepared to give up at the beginning. If he had to, on courage rather than herself, go through all of her past shadows. She would investigate once again to locate him. With patience, Carson listened as Harper described all of her past interactions with the relationship between PTSD and Valor, abrupt absence, and her misgivings. Our knowledge about Grant Ellison is limited. Carson acknowledged, but I've heard Ellison's name prior to his wealth. Influence is sufficient to make things. Harper handed over everything and vanished. She had the program for the flyer competition. Her board's notes, including a list of queries she had jotted down in her restless nights, Carson said he would investigate. After a few quiet days, there was a call. Perhaps Carson mentioned something. An anonymous tip on a confidential. Ellison's property is located close to the outdated kennel facility on the periphery without. Harper offered to come Carson while he waited. Rejected. A warrant is required if he is guilty. Over the next 24 hours, let's get this done correctly. Passed like 100 years when Carson called once more, and his tone was solemn. Discovered evidence of scratching on walls. There are no dog blood traces from a chewed leash, but indications that one was being held there. Harper's heart sank recently. Do you believe he's still alive? She muttered. Believe that someone did not get the obedience. Carson said, dogs enjoy. They don't give in to valor, especially when their connection is with another person's tears. Rose in Harper's eyes, but not because. Fear of rage and bravery had not only been. Late that evening, he had resisted being abducted. Harper gazed up at the sky while standing outside. Stars that the war's tragedy had left her. Fearful of a lot of things, masses are silent. Even her own thoughts, but what she was afraid of. Most people were now losing the person who had assisted her in rediscovering herself. She wouldn't allow that to occur. Carson arrived the following morning with new information that we obtained from a gas station close to the property. He stated, Ellison's truck is seen driving away, but not coming back, and second car is there. That we follow outside to a veterinary clinic. Perhaps a veterinarian noticed the local Harper's breath. Valor was wounded. Perhaps someone was attempting to. Assistant Carson gave her a direct look in the Harper, we're getting close. Hold on for. Harper gave in for the first time in days. Hope for the man who had taken her to blossom. Peace believed he could break the connection between her and bravery, however, undervalued the importance of survival and love. Easily handled a little veterinary clinic, tucked down amid oaks just outside. Detective and Harper on the outskirts of town. Carson got there shortly after sunrise. The receptionist nodded despite seeming shocked. Carson's badge was displayed in the return, she muttered, and a guy brought him. Claimed to have located the dog 3 days ago. Harper trailed behind, limping close to the road, through the heart of the immaculate hallway, thumping so loudly that it was inaudible. Other than that, every stride felt like a march in the direction of a sacred object. Then she seen him lying in a kennel with his coat, patched a bruise beneath one leg that was matted. One eye, yet at that moment, he was still alive. His ears perked up as their eyes met, and his. The body fought to stand up in spite of the discomfort. Harper fell on her knees and said, Hey boy, it's me, Valor said, whining softly, gently tapping as soon as the latch. He stumbled into her arms as it clicked open, putting his body weight against her chest as though she rapped in order to confirm her authenticity. She wrapped her arms around him and buried her face in, tears from his fur seeping into his coat. She muttered, I'm really sorry, but I should have better safeguarded you. But Valor didn't hold her responsible. He never did. Detective Carson stood silently close by. Providing them with room wasn't merely a reunion. It later became a resurrection as the veterinarian described Valor's minor injuries, fractures, dehydration, and abuse-related trauma. Although Harper's hands trembled, her voice remained stable and will do whatever he needs. Understand that he's returning home on the return trip. Waiting on the porch, Maya's eyes were wide with hope when Valor and the vehicle arrived. Maya stepped out upright yet rigid, broke down in tears, and rushed to embrace him. He licked her face while holding her close. Harper, moaning with delight, observed the situation so overwhelming that she had almost given. With terror, almost allowing the darkness to triumph. Once more, but not this time, she had retaliated and prevailed in the days that. The nightmares that followed were distinct, still arrived, but Harper had stopped waking up. His head was continuously yearning for courage, steadily resting over her ankles, and, yes, when she strolled among the town's residents, prevented her from staring or whispering. But, to state, I saw your story on the news. Alternatively, she said, you're brave. Feel courageous. Yet she felt lighter. Maya went back to her drawings and added more color. The young girl with less shadows. She used to snuggle up next to her granny and now Laughing overtook the silence. With bravery at her heels, they had succeeded. During one afternoon, Harper was standing near. Behind them, on the edge of the former grassland, Maya had attached a ribbon to Valor's residence. Collar, one of her faded yellow ones. It flew in with my mother's old collection. The wind while he sat attentively next to Harper. As I saw butterflies dance, I believed I lost everything following the war. Harper muttered, glancing down at the canine who had rescued her from each panic attack, and recollections of the girl who is still carried the mother's light that was also lost. Soon, or perhaps this is the culmination of it all, she started off without a showcase or a trophy for which she didn't require authorization. Restore the relationship between Maya and her bravery was rebirth rather than just recovery. So, they constructed a brand new training. Circle a few veterans in the backyard, from a neighborhood dogs that had already been forgotten individuals who were formerly fractured, and Harper spoke a little louder and higher, slept a bit longer due to the mending. She discovered that it's not about deleting the past. It's about improving what you write in. Its location. At one point, Harper thought her story had finished with her scars from the conflict as well. Deep to heal, but with love, tenacity, and unanticipated friendship. She learned that recovery is more than merely. Perhaps it's therapeutic, but also transforming. Discovered her in the most surprising manner on. For legs, steady gaze, and a devoted heart accompanied by Maya and Valor. She lived again, not just survived. To anyone with unseen injuries, keep in mind that this mending isn't about putting the past behind us and focusing on the future. Sometimes it leads to something better. One motive to attempt is all that is required.